Welcome to Caribbean Straight Talk, with real conversations and great interviews. Hosted by Lima Dunbar, with our special guest, Dr. Patrick Coggins, a professor and educator discussing the importance of a multicultural education. Hi, this is Lima Dunbar of Caribbean Straight Talk, one of your hosts. The other host is George Busu, and he's currently still on location. And tonight as always, we have a really good show for you. It is Black History Month, and we have Dr. Patrick Coggins. But before we bring on Dr. Coggins, let me read some highlights from Dr. Coggins. PhD, currently serves as chair of the Faculty Senate. He is a member of the President's Cabinet of Stetson University and served as a Jesse Ball DuPont Endowed Chair Professor from 1991 to 2011. These are the letters that he holds: EDS, University of Connecticut; PhD, University of Connecticut; JD, University of Connecticut Law School; and LLD, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Let me just read a little bit more from his bio. Dr. Coggins is a professor of education and multicultural education at Stetson University. He currently serves as chair of the Faculty Senate and is a member of the President's Cabinet. I said all of that earlier on, but what I did not say is that Dr. Coggins is the first Caribbean Guyanese professor and holder of an endowed chair at Stetson University. Let me read a little bit more because he's such an interesting man. He has an extensive experience designing and teaching courses in multicultural diversity, multicultural education, ESOL, or English as a second language, social studies methods, and classes on cross-cultural communication. His publications concern confidentiality, fraud discovery, and control cultural competence, and the World War II Tuskegee Airmen. So without further ado, let us welcome Dr. Patrick Coggins as our guest to Caribbean Straight Talk.
Thank you. And I look forward to conversating and sharing my views with you this evening.
Well, I look forward to that too. So let's jump in because I got a couple questions that I want to hear your feedback on some of these, if not all. So let's jump in. When you attended college in the 60s, African Americans were marching for equal rights. Fast forward to now, do you see regression in this country or progression?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. In the 1960s, I got involved in the civil rights movement because of the four young girls, Denise McNair, Addie Mae Collins, Carol Robinson, and Cynthia Wesley, got killed in 1963 at the 16th Avenue Church, Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, and continued to be involved in the civil rights struggle, even though I had a lot to learn because the issues were a little different than they were in Guyana and other parts of the Caribbean where I lived. From my perspective, I think even during that period, people were willing to listen. They were willing to talk about the issues, and in particular, I saw the churches getting involved and making making statements about the issues. What I see today is a regression where people don't want to talk about race. They don't want to talk about the issues, and people are behaving as though nothing is hurting African Americans, hurting Caribbean folks, hurting people whose color may not be white. So I see that the struggle has moved with some progress, but there's just a tremendous amount of work that still has to be done in the United States and in the state of Florida, as we will probably discuss a little further.
See, what I also look at too is that the NAACP, I forget the name of the particular organization, civil rights movement.
Yeah.
It's 75 years by now.
Well, I would say over 100 years.
But
They
when they walked, and when Rosa Parks, who was not the first black woman
That was
to defeat,
1955.
that was 1965, and then they had the boycott with the buses and all of that. That was 1965. I
Yeah.
turned 60 this year. Yeah, I can afford to put my age out there now. So the way I look at it, the civil rights movement is not very old. So it's not quite 100 years old just yet. And it seems to me that there are times when we have progressed and then we take a step back. There's a reggae song that goes one step forward, 10 steps backward, or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
You know, and I feel like that's what has been happening over the past couple of years. But you know, there I go showing my passion. I apologize not. Um,
If I would add to that,
mhm,
I think it's important that we see the modern civil rights movement starting in 1955 with Rosa Parks, and and again in 1963 when 8,000 of those young kids in Birmingham, Alabama went to jail and
mhm,
four of them died. But
mhm,
remember, Haiti was in 1804 and 1865. We had the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, and that came about because of the struggle or all of the stuff that was going on in the Caribbean and all of the stuff that was going on in Louisiana as well as in Florida and other parts of the country and other parts of the world. So I would encourage us to look at the modern civil rights movement with Martin Luther King in starting in the 50s, but don't forget that the struggle was going on that led to the voting rights in 1870 and all of the freedoms that African Americans were able to get.
but sir, don't you see? In some ways we're still stuck in the same spot because voting rights is not our right because it was never codified. So at any point in time, they could pretty much, you know, say, you know what, y'all
Yep,
can't vote no more. You know, and I think a lot of people, and I know we have to move along here because there's a lot to discuss, but I
yep.
think a lot of people don't quite get it or don't want to get it, you know. But let's continue chatting here, so we, because I still have a whole lot of other
Yes.
questions to ask. Why do you think race is more divisive today? Here we go. More divisive today than it was decades ago.
Yeah, I think there are basically four reasons that I see. Number one, African Americans are much more vocal today than they were before. The- And there are several reasons for being vocal. The courts have been responsive with the Brown decision, giving us rights and equal access in schools and hotels and other places. So the second thing is that you have a larger population of African Americans who are well educated, who has income, and I say that we generate almost $1 trillion as African Americans. So we are part of the economic process, and we can see the hardships, we can see the racism, we can see the discrimination. The the other reason I think is the attempt on the part of the white community to silence the expression, whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's someone saying that police should not be shooting an unarmed person. So I think that there are two good things that are happening. One is that the media, which works against us because they put out misleading information, but the media also has to report some of the atrocities and some of the things that are happening towards the Black community.
Um, let me go over some of what you said. We as a people, African Americans, are more vocal today. There's a larger population of African Americans who have income, and there's an attempt by the white population who
Hmm.
is decreasing
Hmm.
in the demographic is decreasing to silence to silence expressions.
Right.
Let's take a break. And when we come back on the other side, we'll have a conversation about that.
This is Professor GT inviting you to join Lima Dunbar along with DJs Code Red and Kevorkian on the People's Chat Room every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on iTunesRadio.com.
Val Branch Duncan, Realtor with North Star First Properties. Whether it's buying or selling, Val can help, and she is certified to assist you in Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Barbados, Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago. Please call Val Branch Duncan, where V stands for valuable, A, attentive, L, loyal. Please give her a call at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622. iTunes Entertainment Magazine, where the focus is to bring information and entertainment wrapped in a little something extra that is pertinent and relative to all of us, regardless of culture. Our features aim at catering somewhat to the curiosity in all of us, whether it be business, entertainment, health and wellness, immigration, our youth, and more. So please visit our website at www.itunesentertainmentmagazine.com or itunesentmagazine.com. Also inviting you to check us out on IG and Twitter at iTunesEntMag. And we are back. Again, this is, my name is Lima Dunbar, and our guest tonight is Dr. Patrick Coggins. We're having a really interesting conversation because remember, this is Black History Month, recognized. Even though I feel most of us who are, I'm going to use a term that the governor of this state don't like. Most of us who are woke recognize that Black history is 365, especially when we're wearing the color. You know what I'm saying? We are Black. So let's go back into this conversation. The question that I asked Dr. Coggins before we went into break was, why do you think race is more divisive today than it was decades ago? And he gave me some responses. And one of them that I really want to zone in on a little is the attempt on the part of whites to silence the expressions of us as African Americans. I almost said Black people, but African Americans. When you said that, one of the first thing that came to my mind was one. I don't know if you've been paying attention to social media these days. I don't know how tapped into social media you are, but for the past year or two, we've been having this term, the Karens. White people who randomly decide that they need to shut down anyone that looks like me or you. And it could be if we're in an apartment complex that may be a little bit too nice, and they try to shut us down. The governor of Florida with his, he don't want to, the term or the expression that we as Black people came up with, stay woke. He has turned that into a weapon against us. Right. Same way he has turned critical race theory. And I think I have a question about that later on. Yeah. But I like the fact that you did say that the attempt by some whites to silence our expressions. And that's the reason why we're more divisive today. I would also add to that, and let me hear your thoughts on that. Yeah. The fact that the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party that was that existed from, let's say, maybe even 15 years ago. They have turned, they're trying to turn our race against us. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and let me make 4 points. White supremacy in the United States has increased substantially. Take a state like Florida. Florida is now number 2 with respect to white supremacy groups. Florida is continually increasing the number of extremist white groups. And what is driving this, from my perspective, is something that drove whites to destroy Black progress. It happened during Reconstruction, where African Americans were doing well, they were progressing, they were making progress. And even as late as 1925 in Ocoee, we saw that they went into Ocoee and massacred several African Americans and destroyed their community. I think that what is happening again, it's a reoccurrence of this. I think the white community is seeing that African Americans are doing well despite all that they have put in place to limit voting, to whether it's building the jails substantially with black young men and black women, um, and we're seeing that we are slowly but surely making progress. The other thing is that we are speaking out, and this is something that I don't think the white community has been used to. They're used to us being very quiet. But the young population and the fact that we also have access to media, we have our podcasts, we have our programs that are speaking out. We have athletes who are speaking out, who are looking at racism and looking at discrimination from not a silent point of view, from a very vocal point of view. And I think that this is making the white community uneasy, and they're going back to old tactics, which means they can shut us down, they can intimidate us, and that will stop the train from moving. And I say that that's not going to stop the train from moving, because we have gone, we know what the tactics are, and we are responding. And we saw with the governor's efforts to limit African American studies that there was demonstration right on his nose. There was
Well,
demonstration, and
let me,
what I am hoping is that the NACP and others will then go the next step, and that is take it to the courts. I mean,
well, you see, Dr. Coggins, I am so cynical. Very cynical I am. And I had a question about African American studies, but I'm going to ask it now, seeing that you brought it up in that particular response. So for me, that's a segue into this question. What are your thoughts on African American studies AP classes being blocked in Florida until certain topics are taken out of the curriculum? And before you respond, I don't know if you're aware of this, but sometime this week, I think it was yesterday, some students in a high school somewhere here in Florida, I believe it's in Florida, I didn't read the entire article, they did a student walkout because this is Black History Month and the school was trying to limit what they should or shouldn't put out there for Black history, and the kids were not having it. And it was a high school. The kids were not having it. They walked out.
right.
Which taps into what you were saying, that they're much more vocal, they're not afraid, they just
Well, and I really want to touch on something that is very important. In 1994, the state of Florida, the legislature passed a law that required that we teach African and African American history and culture. And the law says we should start in the continent of Africa, which is the second largest continent, and where we know humanity started, and so much of what the world has today came out of Africa. And it's also talked about the Caribbean and the dispersion of Africans throughout the Caribbean, the enslavement process that started in the Caribbean, and then what happened when they came to North America, which we call now the United States of America. There's a law.
Okay, so sir, if there's a law and this was passed nationwide or just in Florida?
Yeah, just in Florida. Florida passed
If there's a law, then why does Ron DeSantis think that he can get away with blocking the African American AP classes?
And that is the thing that is very confusing. If there's a law and the governor knows there's a law, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm sure he is a law-abiding citizen.
Mm-hmm.
We follow the law. And I think those students who walked out of their particular school is familiar with that law, because we've been talking about this law, and we do some of it during Black History Month, the month of February, but it's something that says you're supposed to be teaching African and African American studies from kindergarten right through to 12th grade. And it's
Okay.
mandatory. It was not optional.
So you see, this is where I have to get on my next soapbox. My next soapbox is this. Where's the NAACP? Where is the Florida Democratic Party? Where are they in all of this? And I've been shouting that from the rooftops for the past week and a half on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
Okay. They are not present, they are weak.
Yes.
And when DeSantis doesn't have someone to take him to task, he thinks he can get away with stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's and what he's doing, but what he's doing and what they're allowing him to do by not taking him to task on it is helping him to get stronger.
Right.
Because
Right.
the more he gets away with it, the stronger he becomes.
Yeah. And
I didn't know there was a law.
there is a law, and that law has been in existence since 1994, and it requires that all schools in the state of Florida, from kindergarten to 12th grade, teach African and African American studies. And there's been commissions that were set up to develop curriculum, and the curriculum is already there. It's stored at FAMU. There's a group of people. We just had a workshop this summer, and I don't know whether the governor is aware of that, but teachers have been teaching this content without any concern. It's been infused into the regular social studies and to humanities, into language arts. And let me go a step further. If you look at the standards that the governor just approved for teaching of English and language arts, it starts with a quote from Frederick Douglass, who talks about emancipation, who talks about the need to liberate African Americans. And my question is, why would you put that quote in the required instruction for teachers if there was not an understanding that there's a law that requires that we teach this? It is not something that I can just decide not to teach. Until the legislature revokes that law, we have to teach about the Caribbean. We have to teach about ancient Africa. We have to teach about African Americans, the slavery period, emancipation, all of the things that we have endured as a people in the Americas.
To the best of your knowledge, has the Florida legislature struck down that law?
No, that they have not. Let me
Then
go a step
why
further,
is this man getting away with this?
let me go a step further, which is fascinating. That's what I'd like to see the NACP. I'd like to see the churches.
Those
I'd like
people
to
don't
see
have any guts anymore. The
the-
NAAC lost its teeth when Thurgood Marshall and all those when they died. The NAACP, I'm sorry, they don't have any teeth anymore.
one of
I'm
the things,
sorry.
but one of
Go
the
ahead.
things that I think needs to happen, one of the things needs to happen is that well-meaning people in this state of Florida who believes in the Constitution, that there's the 14th Amendment that says that everybody is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that means that everybody is a citizen. Nobody's history should be considered to be unnecessary and not valuable and has no educational value. Because if you say that my history does not have any educational value, I can make the same thing. I do not want to study about what Europeans have done. So I think that the time has come for people to understand that there's a law that requires that this be done. Whether there was a Black History Month, there's a law that came about in 1994. And I would like to see people read that law very carefully. And that is what teachers have been teaching. They've been teaching faithfully. The law says they're supposed to teach faithfully and efficiently using books and materials from the school district. And we've done this since 1994. We have not had any woke, we have not had any major issues and concerns, and teachers have been doing it. Now there's an attempt to prevent that from happening, and that everybody should be concerned about.
I'm very concerned, and I don't know if you can see my expression, but when I heard that there was a law or there is a law, my brain is all over the place because I'm like, If there's a law, why is this happening? And again, where is the Florida Democratic Party, the ACLU? I mean, there is a law, so our rights as people of color, as African Americans, as Caribbean Americans, is being violated.
Yes.
It's he's violating our law,
Yes. And
violating us.
and let me give you the exact law because people need to write it down. And I'm going to say it very
I'm
slowly.
gonna write. You go ahead and
It's Florida Statute 1003.42, which was passed in 1994. It was amended in 2002, and in 2020, it was amended to teach about the Ocoee riots, which destroyed a very promising and prosperous African American community there in Ocoee, Florida, just outside of Orlando. This is the law which has been in existence since 1994. So this law requires that we teach African and African American studies, and until the legislature revokes that law, I intend to continue to teach it wherever I can. And I'm sure that there are other teachers and students who are going to demand that the law be followed because this is the law of Florida.
I really don't think a lot of people. I don't think it's common knowledge. And now that I know about it, I intend to put it out there as much as I can.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do my part, and like-minded people, I believe will do their part. But I think we got to move it along. There's a lot more that can be said about this, but I think you said enough,
Yes.
and we'll move on to another question that I have, which is, and I'm kind of like not going in order that I had my questions because that's just the nature of interviews. Please define critical race theory and why, in your estimation, there is now some concern with the theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Critical race theory documents the atrocities, documents the behavior and the treatment of African Americans in the Americas, North America. Did not get into a lot in South America and in the Caribbean, and 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 I think the objection is that this tells it like it is. It describes the pain, the suffering, the deprivation of rights that African Americans experience, and therefore there's the pushback against that. And one of the things about history, what CRT does is basically document accurately what occurred. Okay. And what is being objected to is that there are groups of whites who don't want white folks and even African American folks to know that history. And give you an example. I ask students, what is the motto of the United States? None of them know what the motto is because it's not being taught in the schools. And what the motto says, e pluribus unum, out of many we're one. That means that this is a nation that is built on several races, several classes, several ethnic groups, over 100 ethnic groups. It's reflected in the motto, it's reflected in the 14th Amendment, it's reflected in everything we've done as a nation. And I think the objection is very simple. No one wants to teach about the atrocities and the enslavement that African Americans experience. And the fact of the matter is, history cannot be forgotten. History cannot be let go. And Carter G. Woodson said something that is very important. And when you hear this, you're going to see why individuals like myself and others like you are pushing. Carter G. Woodson in 1926 said, when a group or individual fails to teach or learn their history and culture, over a period of time, that history and culture will be forgotten, and the group or individual will be rendered nameless and faceless. And in 1926, he said, we must have Negro History Week. And he started that journey of teaching African Americans and European Americans about the history of African Americans so that they'll understand whence they came and will not allow anyone to push them back into those experiences that were very, very humiliating and very, very serious. And I think what is being done is counteractive to what Carter G. Woodson said. And in 1956, the Congress of the United States passed a law requiring that we have Black History Month. And that's why we have Black History Month. It was based on what Carter G. Woodson said. If you don't teach your history, or if you let somebody not teach your history will be forgotten.
It will be forgotten.
And you will be rendered nameless and faceless.
I gotta admit to you, I have to be real, because that's what this show is all about. So I'm going to be real. When I first heard the term CRT, I was pissed. Here's why I was pissed. I was pissed because I didn't understand what it was. I didn't do my little Google thing like I normally would and really to try and really understand what CRT was. And when I did that, I recognized that every day there are examples of critical race theory around us. Banking. Okay, the fact that some banks will give to white people, but they wouldn't give to Black people. I mean, a simple thing like the race, when they say you live on the other side of the racetrack, and that's something that you see examples of that in every city in the United States.
Yes.
I mean, even something as simple as the fact that the image of Jesus is white, not Black. But if you look at the geography of where he came from, they're not blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So now that I really understand what CRT is, and it overlaps a whole lot with Black History Month, and we should not let these people get away with it.
Yeah. And when I speak to my white friends, they said, I'm not going to teach you your history. Your people should take the responsibility for teaching it. But I go a step further. If you have a law in the state of Florida that says we should teach it, then white folks should be teaching it. Black folks, Hispanic, Latino should be teaching it. And when you think about the Americas, Africans built in 1503 when Africans came to, which is now Hispaniola, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic, and spread out amongst the 33 Caribbean nations. We built the Americas before 1619, and our labor helped to build Europe with little or no compensation. So we have been a part of the fabric, the economics of building the Caribbean and building the Americas. We worked here. But when you look at the 13th Amendment, it was about what? It was about the ending of enslavement of Africans. It was the ending of enslavement of Africans, emancipation. So to not teach what is the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery, to not teach that we are a nation that needs to grow and not regress into what we experienced with Jim Crow, etc. We have to make sure that happens. And I encourage the NAACP, I encourage churches, any ministers to really, if you believe that this is a nation where 73% of the population believes in God, God had one commandment. He said, love thy neighbor as thyself. He didn't say hate your neighbor because your neighbor was of a different color.
This is such good conversation. And I wish we could go on and on and on, but we can't. So I'm going to set you up with this question, and then we're going to take a break and come back. And then Dr. Coggins, you'll have an opportunity for us to talk about it on the other side. So I sometimes feel that Caribbean Americans think they are beyond any of the harsh experiences of our African American family. They seem to see it as two different cultures that are not intertwined. Your thoughts, but hold your thoughts because we will talk about it on the other side of this break. So we're going to take a break and we will return with Dr. Patrick Coggins.
Been here since day one.
Hey, it's your girl, Coach Lady Q, asking you to join me on the Glow 365 TV every first Tuesday for the Mia Allman Show, hosted by yours truly, followed by the second Tuesday with Holistic Health Show with Coach Dawn. We stroll down to the third Tuesday with On Q Show, hosted by Evangelist Coach Lady Q. Then we close out the month with the Sophie G Show, hosted by Coach Sophie G. Join us as we go live on Facebook and YouTube at Glow 365 TV Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as we talk about the mind, body, and soul. A conversation you don't want to miss.
Zep Bolai Lawrence, realtor and property stager with a lake known as Fuchsia Lay Realty Group. You can give her a call at 321-689-3467. Send a fax at 321-445-6054. Email zepbl9@gmail.com. Once again, Zep Bolai Lawrence for all your realtor and property staging needs. Hey, this is Lima Dunbar, and we are back here on Caribbean Straight Talk. You know, it is Black History Month, but we know it's 365 is not just the shortest month in the year. We practice being Black, being African American, Caribbean American, 365 days of the year because it is what it is, and we are good with that. So the question that I asked before we went into the break, I asked this of Dr. Patrick Coggins, who is our guest tonight, is, and let me put my glasses on. I sometimes feel that Caribbean Americans think they are beyond any of the harsh experiences of our African American family. They seem to see it as two different cultures that are not intertwined. And I asked him for his thoughts. So, sir, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. One, the enslavement period started in 1503 on Hispaniola and then spread to all of the Caribbean countries, Jamaica, Barbados, and others, St. Kitts, Curacao, Aruba, St. Martin, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Belize, and all of the stuff, some of which is on the map, Panama, etc., the whole Latin America, South America. We were the first persons who suffered. We experienced the pain and suffering from enslavement. We came over here to the Americas in chains, and many of us lost our lives making that journey. But the journey did not come to Florida. The journey came to the Caribbean, Hispaniola, and spread out to the Caribbean countries. So we are a part of the enslavement process. And for 116 years before North America as we know it, St. Augustine was founded in 1565. And who founded St. Augustine were West Indians, African West Indians. They weren't Americans, African West Indians, Native Americans, and the Spanish came to St. Augustine and founded St. Augustine. And later on, you had in St. Augustine, which is now called Fort Mose, a town of 170 Africans. So we have been suffering enslavement for 116 years until 1619, when the British brought 20 Africans to which is called now Jamestown, Virginia. So as a Guyanese, as a Caribbean folk, I see myself as part of the struggle. And let me tell you when it really comes right in my face. When a police decides to pull me over, he doesn't say, are you from the Caribbean or you were born in North Carolina? He pulls me over because I'm driving while I'm Black. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the folks in the Caribbean look like me, look like you. We have lighter skins and lighter shades, etc. But we are first viewed as African descent people. And therefore, I don't see the separation. I see the DNA connection. I see the struggle that went on for 116 years until the enslavement process came to what is now called North America. But we're the ones who started St. Augustine. We're the ones who built there and defended St. Augustine. We have to take credit for that. We were the ones who were in Louisiana The Haitians were in Louisiana. Moved them all the way from Haiti to Louisiana, and were enslaved and working hard in Louisiana. And of course, that led to the rebellion in 1804. And of course, the Louisiana Purchase that made America very rich, because America got almost 3 million acres of land at less than 4 cents an acre. And that came about because of the struggle of the Haitians. But when we look at Jamaica, there was rebellions. We look at Guyana, there was rebellions. So I believe that what is necessary now is for African Americans and Caribbean Americans to come together and understand. I am not going to be silent because I was born in Guyana and I'm a naturalized American. I am not going to be silent because I think I'm not experiencing some of the harshness that other African Americans are experiencing. I think that this is a human issue, and nobody asks me where I was born. Everybody assumes I was born here in the United States until I open my mouth and they hear an accent. So I think that we need to come together and we need to understand that we need each other during this very, I call it a delicate period, when there's attempt to reverse some of the gains,
That
attempt to
we've
reverse
made.
some of the progress that we've made as people from the Caribbean and people from the United States of America.
I'm laughing because I have something to share that may not have anything to do with this topic, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to share it anyway. I've noticed sometimes while I used to work at Disney, what I noticed, and this was years ago, and even now and then I see this happening, where someone will walk up to someone black, all
Mm-hmm.
right, and they will ask them, where you from? Now, it's a Caribbean person, right? And I
Yes.
think sometimes people get mixed up with when they hear where you're from and where you're living, because when I hear where you're from,
Mm-hmm.
my response is I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, if
Yes.
you ask me where I'm living, my response will be I live in Orlando, Florida.
Correct.
But I've heard people respond the opposite. They will
Mm-hmm.
be, and they're from the Caribbean,
Yes.
but they will say, I'm from New York or I'm from Orlando. And
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me, that
Yeah.
sounds so kind of stupid
Yeah.
because it's like, no, you're from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're
The-
living in some part of the United States, but you're from the
you're
Caribbean.
from the Caribbean.
And
Yeah.
I feel like if that is a kind of dissociation kind of thing, and it ties into some of their actions, some of their thoughts, some of their behaviors with regards to even this topic of Caribbean Americans and thinking that they're beyond the
Mhm.
experiences
Yeah.
of African American people.
Right. And you made a very important point, because when people want to know why I have an accent, I said I was born in beautiful Georgetown, Guyana. My great grandparents were slaves, and I chose not to go to Russia. I chose to come to the United States because I thought that the United States will provide more freedom and more opportunities than if I'd gone to Russia during the Cold War, etc. We are at the point right now.
Mm-hmm.
My friend just had his birthday party. Where did he go? He went to the Dominican Republic. Who took care of him at the restaurant, which was owned by African Caribbean folks?
Mm-hmm.
And he was so elated, and he understands the connection. He's a judge in the state of Connecticut, and so I believe that when people understand that there was a process, and I say jokingly, I was dropped off in Guyana because I was misbehaving, and and then the boat continued, and it got it got to Florida, it got to North Carolina, it got to South Carolina, and all the other places. But we all have a common connection, and that common connection is that we were part of that enslavement process, or ancestors, etc.
Mm-hmm. I like that. And I also heard you mention in between there the solution, but I'm still going to ask anyway. What are your solutions for where we should go from here?
Well,
Where are you
and
going to
I'm
in
going to
future?
start with the religious point.
Okay.
If we believe that
Mhm.
all human beings are worthy in the eyes of God, then African Americans need to be treated as equal. Secondly, if we believe in the Constitution, which says we are equal, then we need to follow it. We should do nothing to disrupt that process. Thirdly, we need to have more conversations. We need to talk about this, and we need to understand that through discussions, we are going to be okay. I remember talking to a KKK young man,
You're brave.
and we became good friends because all the myths that he had in his head, we're able to work it through, and now he's a minister of God.
Mm.
And I think that what is happening is that we are not having conversations. We're just dealing with the media. And I think that we need to have more, the churches need to get more involved, which is something I cannot understand why the churches are sitting silent when our country is being divided. The
Mhm.
time has come for the churches to bring people together, as they've done during the 1960s, during the height of the civil rights movement.
Mhm.
The civil rights movement was successful because the white church and the Hispanic church and the black church got together
Mhm.
and supported what we call justice and the pursuit of happiness, which is part of the Constitution. And then the last thing is that we need to educate our young people, because we don't want to have every generation having to deal with the same thing, that I'm better than someone else because I'm white, or because I'm black, or because
Mhm.
I'm a multimillionaire playing basketball. It doesn't mean that I'm better than somebody else. It just means that we have jobs, we have opportunities that society provides, but we need to come together. And there is no talking. We're just talking at each other. We're
Mhm.
not sitting down as we did in the 60s, where we're having tea and coffee,
Mhm.
and we're eating cake, and we are talking, and we build a strong society. And the last thing is, if America is going to be the model for the world, we have to deal with our race problems. We cannot allow this beautiful country, America, that I love dearly, and many of you listening love dearly, to deteriorate anymore. We cannot have race riots. We cannot have the division that is being pushed right now. We got to respect each other because we're human beings. When I cut my blood is
Need
the
red.
same color as a white person's blood.
Mhm.
I never saw white blood, or I saw black blood. All I saw
Mhm.
is red.
Red
So
blood.
we're human beings.
I like the fact that where we started, we ended on the same spot, because my first question was about regression and progression. And we ended on that, where the regression, part of the regression is the fact that the churches are not as involved as they were back then. Let me go over the points that you made. This during your conversation here, and I missed one, so you get a chance to correct me or to add it. You said that when I asked any solutions on where we should go from here, you said we should be treated as equal. We should all have more, we should have more conversations with each other. We need to educate our young people, which is so important, because when we're gone, they're the ones that remain. And we need to leave them in a really good place, a better place than we're leaving them right now. And you said, in America, if America is to be a model for the world, we need to deal with our problems, our racist problems.
Yes.
And there was one point that I did not write down, um, and you will give it to me right now so I could write it down.
Yeah, and the other point that you should have written down is the fact that we need to talk, and we don't have to talk in big arenas. We just need to talk one on one. We need to talk in the church. We need to talk in the schools. We need to talk in the social clubs, and 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 I believe if we got to take our country back. And what does that mean? We got to bring people back together to understand that all people in the United States are good. And we should not allow anyone to demonize one group or to diminish one group, because the Constitution says, and the motto says, e pluribus unum, out of many, we're one. And the only true Americans really are the Native Americans who own this country.
Mhm. We had a really good conversation. we we gotta end here, but we have so much more to talk about. And this isn't just about Black History Month. This is about having conversations, like you said.
Yes.
So, Dr. Patrick Coggins, thank you so much for being a part of Caribbean Street Talk. We invite you to return anytime so we could continue this conversation because I think it needs to be had. It's great that you have it in your classrooms with your students, but I think, we need to have you and other people that think like you coming out in the community and just sharing that information. And I know that you're okay with that.
Thank you. I look forward to doing it again.
Thank you, sir. You have a blessed evening.
You too.
Hey, it's your girl, Coach Lady Q, asking you to join me on the Glow 365 TV every first Tuesday for the Mia Allman Show, hosted by yours truly, followed by the second Tuesday with Holistic Health Show with Coach Dawn. We stroll down to the third Tuesday with On Q Show, hosted by Evangelist Coach Lady Q. Then we close out the month with the Sophie G Show, hosted by Coach Sophie G. Join us as we go live on Facebook and YouTube at Glow 365 TV Show every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time as we talk about the mind, body, and soul. A conversation you don't want to miss.
Val Branch Duncan, Realtor with North Star First Properties. Whether it's buying or selling, Val can help, and she is certified to assist you in Jamaica, Grenada, Guyana, Barbados, Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago. Please call Val Branch Duncan, where V stands for valuable, A, attentive, L, loyal. Please give her a call at 321-303-9345 or 407-844-8622. iTunes Entertainment Magazine, where the focus is to bring information and entertainment wrapped in a little something extra that is pertinent and relative to all of us, regardless of culture. Our features aim at catering somewhat to the curiosity in all of us, whether it be business, entertainment, health and wellness, immigration, our youth, and more. So please visit our website at www.itunesentertainmentmagazine.com or itunesentmagazine.com. Also inviting you to check us out on IG and Twitter at iTunesEntMag. Zep Bolai Lawrence, Realtor and Property Stager with a lake known as Fuchsia Lay Realty Group. You can give her a call at 321-689-3467. Send a fax at 321-445-6054. Email zepbl9@gmail.com. Once again, Zep Bolai Lawrence for all your realtor and property staging needs.
This is Professor GT inviting you to join Lima Dunbar along with DJs Code Red and Kevorkian on the People's Chat Room every Saturday from 12 to 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time on iTunesRadio.com.
We had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Patrick Coggins, educator from Stetson University. And that is Caribbean Straight Talk for tonight. We will return next week where our guest will be Mr. Marquis McKenzie. See you then.
Thank you.